Ben, I am here with you today to dive into so many different, I know it's going to go so many different ways, this conversation, just because of your lived experience as a hockey player, but not like you were in the hockey world before you were even on skates because your dad was involved in hockey.
Yeah, it's the safe to say that I was born into a hockey family, and I was born in Germany, and this is when my dad was playing in Europe, and my dad from the time he was born in Toronto, grew up, he was drafted by the Maple Leafs, played in the Maple Leaf system forever, and at the end of his career, when he went to Europe, him and my mom were out there, obviously pregnant with me, so I was born in Germany, my sister in Toronto, my other brother in Nova Scotia, my youngest brother in Mississippi. And so even just by where all the family members were born, you could see that we were doing a ton of traveling. And until I was 5, we didn't find our way into Niagara in Ontario to find some roots and grow up. So yeah, it's kind of crazy. And fast forward 30 some odd years later, I'm living the same lifestyle with my two boys. So that's been pretty fun.
That is really, really amazing on its own because I feel like there's a lot of youth out there who are playing the same sports as their parents did. And I'm wondering, like, my parents weren't sporty. And so when I played volleyball, it was my thing. I wasn't having to live up to expectations or standards or like anything like that or felt like I was needing to do that. Is that something when you were young and you were kind of coming up in the ranks, did you ever feel like you were playing the sport because of the hockey family, or did you really just fall in love with it right away and just go for it?
I think both are true, to be honest.
Okay.
I grew up seeing my dad in hockey, and as a young kid, I didn't know that that was different. That was just what I was used to. My dad went to the rink, when I was too young to understand, as a player, and then he got into coaching by the time I was 8, 9 years old. I just thought that was normal. I didn't know any different. And so if your dad, grew up owning an insurance company, it might be natural that you want to be in insurance. And growing up seeing my dad involved in hockey, that's something that I wanted to be in. It was fun, that was natural. And as much as you are playing at the house, we got to go to the rinks on the weekends. And for me, as a kid, I grew up seeing that my dad loved it, and that's something that I inheritedly wanted to do. And so hockey became a passion of mine, not because I was forced to do it or any other reason, but because I genuinely loved it. And I saw that my dad loved it and our hockey family loved it, and it quickly became routine. And like I said, now I'm really proud to be at 40 years old with two boys myself, and I would never force them into youth sports, but because their father and their grandfather have been in hockey, they have taken on the same type of passion and wanted to make it theirs. And so as a dad myself, there couldn't be anything that makes me more proud to see the kids want to kind of follow that same path trajectory that I did.
Yeah, yeah, that's really neat. It actually reminds me of Jordan Owens, who,
Yeah.
for all those of you listening, Jordan introduced Ben and I, and how Jordan is telling me stories of his son, who's like, what, 2, and he just like
Yeah.
wants to sleep in his skates because
Yeah.
he's just wearing them all the time. I think that's so wonderful. So, at any point, did your dad actually coach your team?
No, that's the one thing that I was never really fortunate. So this might sound crazy, and this is like a prelude to how wild of 6 degree separation in professional hockey. But when I was 5 years old, my dad was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, playing, and this is one of the
Mhm.
longest, oldest minor professional hockey franchises that are out there. So this is the early '90s, and when I was 5 years old, my parents separated. So me, my brother, and my sister came to live in Southern Ontario. And I got my first head coaching opportunity for none other than the Fort Wayne Comets in 2019. And so when my son, that was born in Indiana, was 5 years old, I also went through a separation. And so I had lived the same experience that my youngest son that was about to go through. And the biggest difference is me, my brother, and my sister lived with my mother in Canada while my dad pursued his career. And, we've got a great relationship. We just didn't live with them throughout the school season. But when it came down to me, I knew that feeling, that effect that it had on me, not having their father there. And that was one thing I wasn't prepared to do. So when I went through, my split with the kid's mother, I wasn't willing to do the same thing. So, I fought for custody, and me and my two boys came back here to Niagara. And I was really lucky because this was the city that I was raised in. And this is
Mm.
where I was able to gain employment to keep the dream alive of doing everything while still raising my two kids. And so I know that I'm nothing short of being blessed, but the ties of the same story that what my father went through is a lot of the same things that I'm experiencing. And the journey that him and I have had has had a huge influence on what I'm doing, not only as a professional, but as a father.
Yeah, wow. I love that. Thank you for being open about that. Yeah, I'm just so curious because I know that a lot of times, obviously this isn't your experience, but the parents end up coaching the teams and then it becomes a little like it can be a really good experience or it can be a really difficult experience. So I just wanted to see where you were on that scale and it doesn't even pertain to you.
No, well, no, actually, so now actually to tie all that in question, not to blow it off, but
Yeah.
my youngest kid has got my youngest four, Charlie, he's got hockey at 4 o'clock, and outside of preparing, they're at school right now. And then my an hour after that, my oldest, 8 o'clock, he's got hockey right after. I'm going to be on both ice sessions. Just
Okay.
because I have the opportunity now to do
Yeah.
something that I
Yeah.
wish my father was able to do when
Very
growing up
cool.
with them. And whether it's coaching or just being involved. I think the more you can be involved in any child's life, especially the younger that they are, the bigger the impression that you're going to leave with them. And I can see that with my 8-year-old is he wants to be so good at hockey, but it also comes with the same expectations that his father may have been good at hockey. So you expect, the son to be good. And those are tough things to live into. And that's why I
Yeah.
take a lot of fun and pride in doing that journey with him.
Oh, that's really cool, and I want to acknowledge that. That's awesome that you're getting that ice time and you're spending that quality time. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the dream. You've mentioned the dream a couple of times here. What is or was that dream? And tell me about your journey, your process on it.
Yeah, so like a lot of Canadian kids and being grown into a hockey family, that it's the Stanley Cup, right? The
Mhm.
holy grail, the ultimate trophy. And as a kid, when you're playing hockey in the streets or you're you dream of winning the Stanley Cup as a player and hoisting that. And my ability, my stature, only being about 5'10", didn't really allow me to have that successful of a professional career. I mean, I didn't get to make it to the NHL. And yes, I was able to play a great span of hockey games and it in its own right. But that was the dream, is to be able to hoist the Stanley Cup. And when my playing days had surpassed me, it wasn't that, okay, how do I go and achieve that dream? It was, I just wanted to stay involved in hockey. And so 13 years ago, I got into coaching, and one opportunity led to the next and led to the next. And before you blink, 13 years have gone by. That's been my profession. And there would be nothing more than I would love to do is still achieve that dream and hoist the Stanley Cup at one point. And whether I'm a coach or in any, I'd be the janitor for the team if they were going to win a Stanley Cup and allow me to hang out with them and get a ring at the end. But that is the ultimate dream, and that's what I found myself chasing towards, and ever since I was 23. And I almost forgot about what that dream was when I went to college, because I was going two different directions. And not this is a long-winded answer, but I went to school for television and film, and I graduated, and I was working downtown Toronto at CBC, waiting tables actually on a weekend at the keg and going to, do the CBC. And I thought that was my life. I graduated, it's what I went to school for. And just by a lucky fluke one weekend, I went to a free agent hockey camp and I signed a contract. And my life was going in this way, and then it split and went that way. And like I said, that was when I was 23, and now I'm 40 with almost 1,000 professional games under my belt, and it's been no regrets since then.
That is, there's so many pieces in that. And so I want to talk about the dream and the process of getting there. And then the fact that you are still, this many years later, you're still working towards that same dream and how maybe how you get there just changes. Because we have a lot of youth athletes who have these big dreams. And I think there's a struggle because teaching kids patience is a big thing. And
Yeah.
it's like the dream isn't going to happen tomorrow. The dream could happen in 20 years. It could happen in 30 years. It could happen and you're not the player, you are the coach. Or it could, like, there's so many different components to that. So when you kind of set that dream and you shot for it, how did you figure out all the little steps that it takes to get as far as you can? And then how did you stick to it? Because it takes a
Well,
long time.
my first thing that I said, no matter what I did, I just went for it.
Mm,
I didn't have any regrets. I mean, there was things that I tried that didn't work out, and there was a lot of things that I tried when that they did. And so, going back to my playing days when 17, 18, 19, the years that are most important, I didn't get drafted into the NHL. I didn't, I wasn't an unbelievable hockey player, to be honest, in my teenage years. And so at 20, where most people that are excelling that have that path to get to the NHL as a player are going to keep going on that path, where that wasn't my path as a player. I didn't think that I'd be able to get there. And the first thing I wanted to do at 20 was make sure I had an education. No matter what I was going to do, I had something to fall back on. So that was my first plan. And I went to school in Belleville, Ontario, had an unbelievable experience, 3 years of college. It was a 3 year program. I didn't have to do a 2 year program once. Yeah, so we ended up, it was 3 great years, and in my last year it was like, okay, I'm getting to the end of college, and what am I going to plan for after? So I'd taken 2 years completely off hockey, and I started training again, maybe with the hopes that there's going to be an opportunity somewhere after I graduate I can try out. And so when I graduated, I had this job, I had my apartment, and then the tryout came, and like I said, I had no regrets. What happens if I go on this tryout and they say no?
mm,
Well, I've got my education to fall back on, and I'm still working at CBC. And it just so happens that, an atypical route, most players don't go this route. And I ended up traveling it. And when the opportunity came, I had the weekend of my life. I had a great weekend and and the right people, and I was prepared for it. And they literally came down and offered me a contract to the point where I didn't even tell my family I was doing it. I called them up and said, "Hey, I just signed a professional hockey contract." And my dad was so confused because I didn't tell him I was at work at CBC the week before. I had to wait tables at the keg. I had to get my shift covered to go and try this. And,
mm.
it wasn't that I wanted to tell them and then fail. I did this on my own, and I ended up having success, and I didn't realize it. But that was the moment that started, like I took a complete different route. And the biggest thing that I'm going to share with you about trying to achieve this is I don't care what opportunity came up, I went for it. And at 23, I saw that opportunity in Flint, Michigan, and that was my first hockey contract ever. So I showed up to the States. Never lived in the States before, and after that, I had gotten cut. After 13 games, and maybe I wasn't good enough. But I didn't give up. I waited 2 weeks later, the phone rang, and there was a team in South Carolina that wanted me. And I drove all the way to Charleston, South Carolina. Unbelievable life. I mean, growing up in the Canadian North, and now I'm, where essentially the states and Confederation was started, and the plantations and the history and buildings predating 1700. I had never been exposed to one, the lifestyle, all while being paid to be a professional hockey player along the Eastern Seaboard down in the South. I mean, talk about lifestyle. That was my opportunity. And then from there, I went to Wichita, Kansas, and Dayton, Ohio, and Lafayette, Louisiana, and Paris, France, and the Okanagan for a couple years, and Bakersfield, California, and Virginia Beach, and Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I had 2 kids, and eventually back here in Niagara. And now you look back and some great experiences. I'm 40 years old with 2 kids, and all I know is there's going to be another adventure, and I don't know where it's going to take me, but wherever it is, I'm going to be willing to go and do that. And I think that's part of the chase is whatever opportunity comes up is to give it my all. And that's the way I've kind of lived my life for the last 2 decades.
Oh my God, you must have so many adventure stories. It's not even funny. You need to write a book, buddy.
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
so there's a few key pieces in there. Number one is risks. Like you took them. You went to places you didn't know anybody. You did the things you hadn't done before. You took a different route than what the normal athlete would do. Like all of these pieces, you were like, here's the box, screw that. I'm doing it my way.
yeah.
And so r risks are important, but I feel like we get scared to take them as athletes because we think, oh, well, what comes with risk? What if I do it wrong? What if the coach doesn't like it? What if, all these pieces? What gave you the courage to take those risks?
Yeah, support from my parents. Like
Okay.
a support network is if you don't
Yeah.
have that, you might be afraid to fail. What
Yeah.
happens if, and you don't have that support? And I think that's the biggest thing, in life. You can draw that support from anywhere, your family, your friends, wherever you find that support. I know that I had it no matter what.
Mm,
I tried things as a kid, and whether I was right or wrong, I still had the support with a really good childhood development, and I knew that no matter I had tried things that didn't work out, but I didn't give up, and I started getting used to keep going and keep going. And they've always been there through that. Both my parents, my brothers, my sisters,
mm.
anybody that I had in my network kept supporting me. And the first chance that I had to be a head coach came in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and it was the second longest professional hockey team running in 68 years, and I was the first rookie head coach in almost 7 decades. And I was so
Wow.
excited for my opportunity. And that was in 2019. Well, what happens in 2020? The pandemic
Oh,
sets in,
yeah.
right? And in
Yeah.
March, they canceled the first season. And who knows what's going on in the world? And I was living in the States with one son at the time, and I was in a my wife at the time didn't have a visa, and I knew that we couldn't stay in the States because we didn't have an opportunity to make money. And oh my God, what's going to happen? Can we even do hockey? Is the world going to change? And so when I came home during the pandemic, I remember being in quarantine and saying, is this a viable life, during all this? Can I still continue chasing this dream at the age of 35 and raise my kid and provide a life and yada yada? And when you talk about taking risks, I had an opportunity to go to school to be a realtor. My aunt had a brokerage that was ready to hire me. And now, as a young father, I could have given it all up and for the greater good of just being a family man and coming back home in Ontario. And you know what I did instead? In November, I bought a house in the States. Okay, that was in November. My visa was set to expire the following June. And if I didn't get rehired or the hockey season didn't start, it would have been a waste because I would have had to sell the house and move to Canada anyways. And so you talk about taking risks. I doubled
Mm.
down. Rather than giving up, I doubled down. I didn't even stay in the same place. I bought my first house in the States without a visa or even money to pay a mortgage after June. I just said, if hockey starts,
Mm.
I'm going to do everything I possibly can to win and make this life viable. And by a stroke of luck in January, our hockey season started again after the pandemic was canceled 10 months prior. And you know what happened that year? We won the championship. It was my first season as a head coach that we got into playoffs and won a championship. And I was able to put my name on the same trophy that my dad did in 1999. And when I and I
Wow.
gave and I didn't give birth, but my ex-wife gave birth to our second born son in August, right after we had won it in July. And I look back and I think about the gamble that I took and the
Mm.
experiences that I was able to go through. And still to this name, I like to that's a claim where I won a championship in my first full year. I was the youngest coach in Comet history. The team was the Fort Wayne Comets, and that never would have been plausible. That never would have happened if I didn't take a chance and go for it. So I'm really lucky that I did.
Yeah. So for, the, let's say, 15-year-old hockey players listening to you right now, what would you say to them about risk and about doing that?
There's no straight path, to
Mm.
success. And I think everybody wants to be in the NHL and make the millions of dollars. But there's one, hockey is a great sport that'll teach you a million different lessons. And there's so many ways that it gives back to you at the same time. And like me, I've been able to carve a life out of one being in professional hockey, playing professional hockey, owning a hockey school that's been passed down through our family, and staying involved in local and youth sports. And at 15, if it doesn't come to you right away, it's not a typical path for everybody. And so
Mm.
if you don't give up, you have no idea what you can accomplish. But if you do give up, you'll never find out, right? And so that's my biggest piece of advice is you are so young at 15 with so much life to live. You don't know how it's going to unfold, and you'll never find out if you give up at an early age. So no matter what life is going to throw at you, you keep going.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Okay, self-talk and doubt. You mentioned that, like, every once in a while or something would happen and you kind of like, oh, am I good enough? Can I be here? All that. How do you combat that? What do you do in your own head when those thoughts pop up? Because they do. They happen to everybody at every level.
Yeah, I'm actually going through it right now, and
Okay.
I'm lucky where I'm under contract still. I when I came back home, and I told you that was through separation, raising my two boys. I was the head coach of the local team in the OHL, the Niagara Ice Dogs, and it's one of 60 jobs in the entire country, and I was so lucky and so blessed, and we had a phenomenal year, and I signed a 5-year contract, and through family first, I was like, great, I've got stability. We got a home in the same area that I grew up in. After all these cities and experiences, like how lucky am I to bring my boys back home, still keep my job, and I'll do it in the same city that I grew up in. Pinch me, I'm lucky. And so I had 5 years. And then after this past year, unexpectedly, the owner wiped out the entire staff. And so,
Oh.
one, the contract was guaranteed, but then it was like, okay, I've been grinding and running and going all over the place, city to city to get to this point. Am I ready in May and June to pack up and sell the house and get ready to do it all over again? And for the first time ever in my life, I wasn't putting myself first. I saw what my boys were going through and the stability. And even though I had financial resources, was still being under contract, I just wasn't ready to move my two kids yet and continue to chase the dream. It doesn't mean I gave it up. This is the first time since I was 23 in that story that I'm starting the year without a professional organization.
Mhm.
And now I'm dealing with the first time as, what's best for me, what's best for my career, or what's best for my kids. And you've got to really think about it. And that's why I really wanted to take the time while I have the opportunity to become a father first. But becoming a father first and going through it, I realized that I wouldn't be helping them out if I gave up on my dream. And what would I be showing them if I changed careers now? And so I'm going to take the time that's offered to me right now to be a father first and foremost. But given that opportunity in hockey where coaches get replaced midway through the season, is I'll be ready to go and take the kids on another journey and start it all over again. So I know there's still so many years left in this industry, and right now I'm really fortunate to be a full-time father. But when that opportunity knocks, I know that I can't give it up, and we'll start it all over again.
Yeah, yeah. So self-talk is really for you about like weighing out the options, weighing out, pros and cons. Where am I? What is in alignment with my values, it sounds like,
Yeah.
hey?
100%. And you
Yeah.
have to put those things down of, pros, how does this benefit you? How does it benefit the kids, your family, all those things. And you really have to weigh it out. And, once you have kids, you can't always just think about yourself. And for me, now I've got a spouse after 2 years, and, she's been raising them, and we live together. And now it's not only my two kids, it's my spouse that's American. And so there's so many other people that are involved in your success that you start bringing them into your plans, where before in my 20s all I worried about was me, right? And now
Hmm.
there's three people that are in my life on a constant basis that you got to think about too. So yeah, it's a pretty wild change, but I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Oh yeah. So there's a lot, most of this story is also revolving around like being committed.
Yeah,
Like you're a super committed person to your dream, to your cause, to your, I feel like it feels like your purpose too, hey? So
yeah.
this is always an interesting question. What is the difference to you between being committed to something and being like motivated for something?
So motivation versus commitment, or I'd like to even
Yeah.
maybe not say commitment, but inspiration. Because I've actually had this speech before. This was one of the first speeches that I ever did, was the difference between motivation and inspiration. And I was
Okay.
really lucky where a lot of anybody, whether you're, in the sport or not, would recognize the name Mark Messier. And when
Mm-hmm.
I first got into coaching, I was lucky to go to a symposium in Edmonton and listen to him speak. And this is I'm not stealing it from him, but it was really inspiration. And he said, we talked about the idea of what leadership looks like, and listening to this, and I thought it was great motivation. If you're a boss, if you're a father, you're a friend, and or you got somebody that you're trying to motivate every single day to be at their best, and that's tough. That's tough to find a way, whether it's you're motivating yourself or whatever it is. It is tough to find that motivation for every other person. But the difference is if you can find a way to inspire, that person is going to find a way to motivate themselves. If you can lead through inspiration, they're going to find the motivation within themselves. So, for example, instead of telling my son to do things and be a hard worker and do this to achieve, if I can do that myself and show him what hard work looks like and go and achieve my dream, hopefully I can inspire him to be the best version of himself. So he wants to do that for himself rather than telling him every single day. If I could find a way to inspire him, he'll come up with that motivation himself. And that's not anything that I just came up with, but that was passed down. And that when you hear some things and you take it with you, I was blown away. And so that's maybe a way that I've been trying to live both professionally and personally, as a father.
Yeah, that is so huge, and that's something that we speak about actually all the time to parents in Forge is that a lot of parents we speak the speak.
Yeah.
We're telling and we're talking and we're giving direction and we're coaching and like all of these pieces when at the end of the day, our kids are sponges to watching and learning through what we are actually doing. So if we're telling our kids be confident, have positive self-talk, like all of these pieces, and then they see us living out a small version of ourselves, which are they actually going to attach onto and do? They're going to
Yeah.
model themselves after you. So I really appreciate that, that you
And I
brought
did
that up.
say I was lucky enough to win when my son was 3.5 years old. I've got pictures of him eating cereal out of the cup.
Oh my
And,
God, that's amazing.
he's there and all the players made sure to say, hey, wash that cup before you, we spent a few days partying with it. But,
Yeah.
after I washed it out, we poured a little bit of Fruit Loops and milk in there. And, from a very young age, he did, he was able to witness his dad have some success and all those things that I talked about, the gamble of investing in a house and buying, going for it, only to see at a young age what, would pay off. I thought I was very fortunate to be able to live that. And that's something that I keep doing. And I don't want to, I don't want my kids to say, hey, all they've ever known their father as is being involved in hockey. And I don't want them to see their dad give that up. So I'm hoping to find a way to use that as the inspiration where no matter how hard it is for my kids, you asked, what's that path look like? What advice would you give? And whatever they're looking up to, I would find somebody to look up to model it after, because it's not always a straight path, but that's how I want to raise my kids or even coach the kids that I'm on, is find a way to inspire them instead of motivate them every single day.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So over 900 games of professional hockey.
Yeah. 757 exactly coaching, based on 11 professional years. And then I played parts of 3 years, finished in Paris, France, which was, an unbelievable experience, even just looking back. And this is, you know, my dad has had a legendary career where he's the only person in the history of hockey to coach 1,000 games in the NHL, coach 1,000 games in the minors, and play 1,000 games. He's been doing this ever since he was 16 years old and just unofficially retired when he was 67. I mean, that's over 54 or something years. I'm not the best mathematician when you add all that up, but that's the same thing is he's done it for so long. And I think, oh, that's so tough to get to. And then you blink and you're saying, wait a minute, I'm almost at 1,000 myself, before I even hit the age of 40. And he did it all the way till he was 67. So, yeah, it's been a journey, and yeah, one I don't like. It's a train ride. I don't want to get off right now. You know?
Yes, I can see that. And so I'm so curious as a coach with all of this experience under your belt, when you are looking at your players, what are like the top three attributes that stand out to you that make you confident that that player is going to add value to your team?
Character is the very first one.
Mm.
I've been really fortunate to be able to coach and play with some amazing guys. Like I'm almost jealous. Like I wish I was that good, or I wish I was that,
Yes.
good of a person, really blessed. And at the same time, there's been the same on the opposite. Not as many, but you can
Hmm.
tell what you value, and you find a really good, talented player as a coach, but he's got really bad character, doesn't respect. I mean, it's difficult, doesn't help you win. And when you find a great character, you can see when you have a lot of them how much it helps you win, and you want to be around them. And I think that's one of the biggest things is a bad character type person, selfish, doesn't go the extra mile, doesn't work as hard, whatever characteristics you want to label that. If they're a bad character, that's the biggest red flag in hockey. And compared to a great character, somebody that you want to be around, somebody that inspires other people and wants to be the lifeblood of the room. I mean, I'd bend over backwards and go to work for somebody like that all day long.
That is such a huge, huge piece. And that really kind of plays into what we teach at Forge with like the mental toughness, being somebody who's got resilience and grit and shows up and is honest and loyal. And yeah, that's really good. So what would be number two? Character, then what?
Well, character, I think that's the first thing that you can recognize. I
Yeah.
mean, talent, everybody, as far as working with somebody, I mean, talent is one thing that will get you noticed, but the
Mhm.
biggest thing is the work ethic.
Mm.
You need luck and you need to be able to talent, and if you can't play, you can't play. But if an average player can become great through a hard work ethic, where a great player can become average through a bad work ethic. And I think that's the difference. It's going to separate, like I said, average players through great players is what type of work ethic do they have? It's one thing if you're standing there as a coach and watching them work out or watching them, but if you turn your back or you're out of the room, is that player as committed or as hard working to get to the same place without their coach watching? And the ones that are self-motivated with the same work, that same work ethic, when
Mm.
nobody else is making you do that, that's going to be a huge one. So really great character and work ethic. And a lot of other people think that they've got to be the most talented player, or they've got to be the biggest or the fastest, and that's not the first things that we notice as coaches.
Yeah. So you have good work ethic. I can tell that from conversations. Is that something that you were born with, or is that something that you learned along the way?
I think it's something that you have to develop,
Yeah.
because when things don't come as easy, you got to work hard for them. And yes, I know
Mhm.
my father was able to open a few doors for me, but nobody was going to give me a job just because of what my father did. You still got to be able to do it, and there's countless hours that you have to put in. And when people recognize that type of work that you put in, the hours that you put in, you seem to get rewarded. And that's something that I knew that I was really fortunate and lucky to have. So work ethic isn't something that's necessarily born with, but something that I recognized. And the same thing, I saw what my dad went through and how many different cities and how hard he had to work and how early he would go to the rink and how late he would come back, and he'd be going in on his off days. And those are things that I put in my daily routine that I took just from watching my father. But that's something I had to learn. I didn't work hard enough as a player to make it where I wanted, but as a coach, you can't have that same work ethic and expect the same results. So I had to change my work ethic as a coach to get to where I want. And then when I started seeing results, you understand the more you put in, the more you get out.
Yeah, that is such a great piece. And like all of you athletes listening, right? Is that work like, are you following through on all the drills that you don't like doing? It doesn't matter. Are you actually following through and doing them as hard as best as you can? Are you doing the workout? Are you fueling your body? Are you like all of those workout pieces or work ethic pieces? So when it comes to work ethic, what would you say? Because I feel like the younger generation, athletes is a little different, but still not quite.
Yeah.
We really have a younger generation that is struggling to understand that you have to put in the time, the effort, the hours, all of that in order to get, the byproduct that you want, kind of a thing, right?
100%. And you really have to do want it. And
Mhm.
here's a great example as I took my family on a vacation to Kelowna, British Columbia. And one of my really good friends from my time when I lived there was, his name's Brandon Redschlag, and he's got a son that is the same age as mine. And we thought it would be a great week that both boys could get together and, do the biking and the hiking and hockey or whatever it was. And so this was their first time meeting. And what did they do on the very first day? Well, my friend broke out the ladders first thing in the morning in the summer, and they started training on ladders. And my son was like, "What is he doing?" And this was the 8-year-old that was motivated to be the best hockey player. And my son's looking at it and saying, "Well, I want to be a good hockey player too." And then he
Mhm.
started doing the ladders, and then they were doing, the passing, and then they were running up the hills and trying to race each other. And 5 days of that, my son found inspiration watching somebody else that was like the same way inspired to do it himself. And just because my son was wanted to be a good hockey player, he saw what a good hockey player was doing and then said,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to do this every day. And as soon as we came back, he said, let's get a ladder, let's do this. And so I thought that was pretty cool that it was exposed to another
Yeah.
kid that was just as inspired to be great. And my son's inspiration was, I'm not as good as that player, so I better work as hard as that guy to be as good as him. So I thought that was an eye-opening thing for a father, as he realized that as a young age, is if he wants to be as good as the next kid, he better put in the same amount of work, if not more. And
Yeah.
they don't know that as children. You can tell them that until they're blue in the face, or you can be 40 years old and having to learn the life lesson the hard way. So I used my experiences of saying, listen, if I'm not going to push you to do it, you got to be self-motivated at the same time. So there's a fine balance between pushing and then having to have that motivation to do all those little extras by on your own or by yourself.
Yeah. It's contagious,
Yeah,
the
it
work ethic
is.
piece. Because I even remember watching the series that was on Netflix with Michael Jordan. And how even like all of his teammates from back in the Bulls era and like all that were even talking about how he was just so extreme with his work ethic and
Yeah.
with showing up and doing it time and time again. And he was that I mean, some of them were like a little fearful of him,
Yeah.
which is a whole other story. But because one player on the team was that serious about his sport and getting that much better, then all of a sudden the entire team gravitated towards it too. So it's interesting, like for those of you listening, if there's no one else on your team that is necessarily got that work ethic or who is doing it, then you be the first person. Because if you step up and step into that, all of a sudden you are the leader and it becomes contagious and the whole team is doing it.
And in the hockey world, that player usually wears a big letter on his chest because he's the one to lead by the best example, especially the first one to do it without being told, as long as it's in a positive reference.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, good point. Very good
Yeah.
point. So, actually curious now that you brought that up, is the captain usually the best skilled or is it the person who has the best character and has the best work ethic and whatever that third one is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, not always, to be
Okay.
honest with you, not
Yeah.
always. I mean, you look at some of the greats and brand name recognition. Usually, the greatest are the greats because they're the hardest working or the most skilled. But it doesn't always happen like that. You've got people that are born to be leaders, but might not be the best on the team. And I've gone through that, and we had that whole experience. Actually, that was one of the biggest things that we had argued about is who should wear the C in professional hockey. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you get it wrong. And,
Yeah.
I've had both opportunities to name good captains and bad captains that have gotten us over the hump. But that's a big key is to know who's leading in that locker room or, whatever space that you have, because there can be
Yeah.
negative leaders too. If you've got the best player, but, and he's leading, but he wants to inspire everybody else to hate the coach or
Mhm.
to hate the organization. I mean, that's not a leader at all. That's a negative leader. You need somebody that might say, hey, I'm not going to let him talk like that. I got to step up and I got to be a positive leader because you're not never going to win when you're bringing negativity to the rink every single day. So, yeah, it doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah.
It's about the value of who you are inside. And if you've got those positive leadership values where everything is positive, you're always, talking, trying to inspire others, bring others up rather than build each other down. That's a sure sign of somebody that's fit to lead a room.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so we had character for number one, work ethic for number two. What would be another value or attribute that would set a player apart in your eyes as a coach?
I think finding ways to like, and I said this at my age, finding ways to give back, but it might not be a donation to the community. It might just trying to help somebody else or work with somebody else become a better version of themselves.
Hmm.
There's so much focus on what you're trying to do for yourself that is there any way that I could help make somebody else better that's going to allow me to help myself, so for a line mate, for example, if I'm talking in hockey circles and I'm so worried, do I have a good enough shot, am I fast enough, well, can I help somebody else develop and with that chemistry. For me as a coach, there's been so many people that have helped me along my journey and have success. And I remember just as a young guy trying to find a footing in the door, and the people that lent me a hand, I want to do the same thing for maybe somebody else that's trying to come up in the ranks for a younger coach, or, whether it's do presentations or podcasts, just try to find a way to give back to the community or the people that have helped you, or in this case, helped me try to achieve so much that I'm so willing and lucky that I've had this great life and in this profession that if you ask me to do anything, I'm working with Brock University girls at 13-year-old girls to do a practice today because they asked. And this isn't my team. And, this is just my community that when I was a 13-year-old, I would have loved if a professional coach came out to work with me. So that would be my third thing is find a way to give back to people or the game that have given you so much.
Oh, that's so good. And you are the first person to bring that one up. So, like, way to have that in your sights. And I agree with that because that also gives us it teaches us so much because giving is really also it helps fill our cups too.
Yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of people don't realize that if they haven't grown up around it or they have never really done acts of service in any way, shape, or form. But to actually know that that is something that stands out to coaches in your sport. And it's interesting because the coach doesn't even necessarily, I think, have to see that you are doing that. Because if you are somebody who does give back in any way, it kind of just shines through in how you carry yourself, doesn't it?
That was, and I told you about Mark Messier, and he was legendary, second, one of the best of all time, like top three solidified, six Stanley Cup rings, multi-millionaire, absolute legend. And he was there not because he was being paid, but because he was to do a presentation on what it meant to be a leader. And he gave back to somebody like me that was coming up, and I'm still talking about that. I was 28. Now I'm going in to be a 41-year-old next month. It's almost 12 years later. I still remember those teachings. And if he wasn't willing to give back, and to some of his time, I don't know if I would have had the same type of lessons or same type of, upbringing through my career if it wasn't for just that moment of him showing up. So I remember a lot of people doing things along my career, which makes me want to do the same thing for any opportunity I really can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And actually, there's a little bit of that going on in my own life right now. I've got a daughter, and plays on the volleyball team at her school, and she's on the older team. And right after school, there's like the junior practice and then there's her practice. And I'm not an advocate for kids just loitering around the school,
Yeah.
wasting time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's where shenanigans happen. And so I said, that's fine. I want to support you playing your sport. However, I can't go back and forth and be picking up and dropping off, and I'm not okay with you just hanging out.
Yeah.
So you need to get involved in the junior practice. And she was like, "What, mom?" I don't even know,
Yeah.
whatever, like the teenage, whatever, right? And I'm like, "No, Like, give back. Now you're the older player. Go help coach. Go throw
Yeah,
balls. Go whatever it is. And you're getting that much more touches too, right?
exactly.
So even to something as little as that, now these younger players have an older player that they're looking up at, and who knows what difference that's making in their life, right? So all of you kids listening, it could be something as simple as that. Like, how are you spending your time? Is there somebody younger that you can give a tip to or practice with or say they're awesome, whatever it is, right? It comes in the
Yeah,
smallest ways.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
Well,
this
hopefully that
hour
works.
yeah. This hour is flying by, and I want to know before we end, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think that we should? That's important.
You know, there's like I feel really, really lucky and blessed. And like you said, our mutual friend Jordan Owens, like he's got an unbelievable career and I follow him. And it's not like we were best friends. We could go years without seeing each other, but pick up and leave off. And so when Jordan, had reached out and said, "Hey, I got a friend in a podcast," it's the way he carried himself every single day, his character and his interactions with me, the way he respected me always left me remembering how great of a person he was. And if he needed help, and we might not be best friends or like I said years, but if he needed something, I would say, "Okay, Jordan, the way you treated me makes me want to do anything for you." And that's a life lesson, is the way you conduct yourself to and the way you endear yourself to
Hmm.
everybody you meet in any walk of life. It doesn't just have to be in sports. Is really, it's going to come back in full circle. And so I'm really fortunate to be able to kind of share that and do that with youth sports. But it's not just related to youth sports. It's how you conduct yourself every day. Whether it's that volleyball teacher, to even allow your daughter to jump in,
Yeah.
if you're an asshole, no offense, right? Nobody wants to do anything for you. It's the same thing. If your daughter's loitering and not a good person, she might not get that opportunity. And
Yeah.
so if it's a life lesson, is if you believe in a certain way of carrying yourself and you want all these things, I mean, the work ethic, the way you treat people, the way you give back, the way you interact, this is an every single day thing. You just don't turn it on when you get on to a court or get into a rink or whatever it is. This is something that you can preach and practice in every single day in your walk of life. And when I think you do that and you get accustomed to it, you tend to find that it gives a lot more back to you than you tend to think. So it's not just a sports related, but maybe a way of living, a mentality or a lifestyle. And that's when you said, the Forge Youth podcast and the values that you guys are sharing with youth organization. I don't think it's just related to sports, but as a whole, lifestyle, just your daily interactions with how you carry yourself. So I was more than happy to oblige and say yes and be able to talk about those experiences.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it is true, 100%. And I always say that all the skills that we're teaching kids through Foraged Youth they're almost like the ninja way to get in there through life. Because if you tell a kid, this is how you should live and this is how you should, and
Yeah,
they're not necessarily going to listen. But if you say these are skills that are going to help you excel at your sport, and they're transferable to life, all of a sudden they're like, oh, that's relevant to me right now. I want to be good at my sport. And they're learning all these skills and they haven't even realized yet that just like you said, it is not just a sport thing. It is a lifestyle thing. Because
exactly.
if you are like athletes, listen, if you are trying to keep them separate, I'm an athlete when I'm playing and I am not when I'm not playing, and you're not living that life in a like congruent way, you're not going to get the outcome that you want. It's when
Yeah,
they meld together and you are the same person in your sport and out of your sport that things are going to start happening. So 100%.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that word congruent is so underutilized in today's speech that any kid that doesn't understand what that word means, go look it up and find a way to implement it into your daily life.
I love it. Oh man. Okay, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to come and spend with me today and share your experiences and stories. I know that you have so many more in there, so eventually we'll definitely have to have you come back on.
Thanks
But
so much for having me. Yeah, really, it
yeah,
was a pleasure.
yeah, and thanks for also being the person that does give back and spending time with those kids and teaching them and showing up for your sons and like that's how we change the future is by giving into the next generation. So thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
And until next time, everybody, train your mind, build your grit, and forge your legacy.
Thank you.